So I noticed a trend when I was looking at graders' notes that they would use different words like negligible, tiny, moderate, major. And I was like, well, what do those terms mean? Those must mean something if I'm seeing those words over and over again. So I was like, how can I quantify what those words mean? But I spent hours and hours scouring comics online in my own collection and just figuring out, what does tiny mean? What does negligible mean? And all those different words. And I came up with a pretty good system that's been working for me very well. So I thought I would share it and just, it's like a 1.0 version of it, but it's been working for me. So I'm just going to give it to you for free. I'm going to give you a link to the spreadsheet below. But first, in this video, I'm going to show you how to use the spreadsheet. So let's just go ahead and get right to it. Okay, so while it won't look exactly the same when you go to the spreadsheet, I've kind of just taken little parts of it and put it here for this video. But if you look at the top here, you'll see that I've got 6 different categories for grading a comic. You got negligible, tiny, minor, moderate, extensive, and major. So if you look along the left column right here on this side, you'll notice there's 7 different things to grade on a comic book. I just came up with these 7 because that's all I could think of. You've got your bindery, corners, the edges of the comic, what the spine looks like, how the staples look, how are they still attached to the book, what's the cover look like? So what does the inside of the book look like, the pages? I took more of a holistic approach to this, like what's the appeal of these areas of the comic? Is the damage negligible, where it takes like magnification to see it? Is it tiny, where you can see it, but it doesn't really affect the grade that much? It's not like going to detract from the quality of the book. Is it minor damage? It's there, maybe it detracts a little bit, but it's not too bad, you know. Is it moderate damage? Okay, now it's starting to detract, so we're now getting more out of the higher grade books. Is it extensive, where it's like, this book, unless it's a highly valuable book, or I just want it as a reader's copy, yeah, I don't know about this book here. Major's like where you got, it's just been abused, you know, tears, rips, creases all over, you know, that type of thing. Maybe the book is detached from the staples, whatever. Basically, the process is you go through each row here. You start with the binder and you see if there's any issues there. Then you look at the corners and you focus on one specific part of the book and you just kind of gauge the overall appeal of it, all the way from nothing to major. And if you just click each one of these, it adds up points as defects accumulate and it comes up with a score. Well, if you look down here on the right-hand side of your video, you'll see I've got this chart from a score of 0 defects, which would give you a 10.0 grade, all the way down to 90 plus defects, points, not defects, but points accumulated because of those defects would be a 0.5 book. And the good thing about this chart here, you know, if you'll notice on the right hand side, high grade, upper mid grade, upper low grade, and then low grade books, is it's color coded so you can see kind of where your book is at once you've accumulated those points. But also I had to look at, I don't know how many videos on YouTube and just reading online extensively. There's not a whole great amount. It's just surprising that there's not, it's kind of, I just had to piecemeal find this information. What you do is you come up with your preliminary score, and then you have to see if there's like a maximum. So this is basically a max defect chart over here. So you can look at what's the maximum creases allowed at a certain book grade. What's the maximum tears allowed? How big can those tears be? Stains, moisture, pieces missing from the book, the foxing on the book, the staples, are they discolored, rusted, whatever, the paper color, the quality of the paper. And what you can do is basically, once you say, okay, my book based on my evaluation is a 9.0, but I've got this 1-inch tear on it, and that's, well, then I know I don't have a 9.0 book anymore. I've got a 7.0 book. So that's like the final stage. You click these boxes as you're grading the book, evaluating it, and then you just kind of do a reality check with this color-coded chart on the right-hand side of your screen here. So what I thought we would do is we would actually evaluate some books on eBay, because the whole purpose of me creating this tool initially was not to grade my own books live, like in my hand, although now I do use it for that. It's so I could ballpark grades when I'm evaluating whether I want to purchase a book or not. So if I can get a good ballpark, I can kind of get a value in my head of what I want to pay, and then I know I cannot overbid on that book. So I've pulled up 4 books here of all different grades. So I thought I would just demonstrate how this tool works. Now I've kind of hidden the gray at the top so we can't see it as we're working here. However, I can pull up, I've already pulled up the grader's notes on these so I can look at those. But what we'll do is we'll just start at the top here and just go through it. So the first thing we look for is bindery issues. And obviously it's going to be difficult to tell. But just looking at this book, it looks like a fairly high grade book. And I don't see anything obvious. I'm going to leave that blank for now. And now let's look at the corners. And you can kind of see maybe a slight little tiny ding on the bottom right there. Let's look at the back of the book. That has a tiny little ding right there. You notice I'm using that word tiny. It's not negligible, it's there. And that top of that spine and the bottom spine has a little tiny ding on it as well. So we're going to go ahead and just go tiny on that, on the corners. Next we'll look at the edges. Let's go back to the front of the book here. And let's take a look at the edges. Not seeing much. This edge on this right-hand side of the book could be just from cutting at the printer, so we won't count against that for now. But you can kind of see a couple little dings on the bottom of the spine there. Let's look at the back. Yep, top edge right there, there's like a little spot right there above TSR. Once again, that's tiny. And there's one right there on the left-hand side. But these are tiny little defects. So we're going to go ahead and go tiny again on that. Now let's look at the spine. It's all about the spine, right? So what we'll do is we'll just look up and down. Okay, you can see a couple color breaks there. And you can see the spine is creased. It may not show up so well on the video, but I can see it. There's several creases. Some of those might be pressable. This book probably hasn't been pressed. And let's look at the back. Okay, it's one of these black covers. It's really going to show up. But yeah, you can see several color breaks here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. About 10 or 12 color breaks. So that's getting us up more. It's not moderate, I would say. I would say that's more minor. It might actually be on the higher end of minor, though, because some of those ticks are pretty big, but they are on the back. So what we'll do, we won't call it moderate. If it looked like that on the front, we'd probably go moderate. But we kind of discount the back a little bit. So there's actually a way, rather than creating an extra couple categories here, what I kind of built into it and figured out how to do this is if you're between two categories, two potential grade levels, you can just, what you can do is just click here and here and just add, it'll kind of put you between minor and moderate in your points. See, we're going from a 4.0 to a 5.5, whereas if we just click moderate, we would be at a 10. So, you know, we're somewhere in between. Just be realistic with it, and I mean, be reasonable with it. And that's what we're trying to do is ballpark here. We're not trying to be exact. We're trying to find a range of like, if this tool says it's a 8, we're probably a 7.5 or an 8.5. If it says we're a 5, we're probably a 4.5 or a 5.5. We're not trying to be exact here. We're just trying to get a ballpark, a reasonable ballpark, so we can more accurately grade and make better purchases and know what to sell a comic for as well. Now let's look at the staples. Not seeing anything on the front, but I think I did notice some color breaks coming off the staples. You can see there's some stress on those staples. And it's not tiny. They're there. So I'm going to go minor on the staples. And so now let's just look at the cover. I keep accidentally clicking the wrong button. So let's see here. The cover looks good. Now there is some slight tanning on this cover. I can see that. And that's going to get us up to at least, it's noticeable, so that when it's noticeable, it puts you above that tiny. But it's, you know, if it's just, tanning isn't so bad. There's a little bit of a stain right there. If you look at G and S right there there's a tiny little stain. Okay, so we're up to minor now. Now I don't see anything like bad tears, rips, huge. It's definitely not moderate. So we're just going to go with minor. Okay, so let's look at the pages. Okay, there's no pictures of the pages. But what we can do is we could just look here. It says white pages. So we're just going to assume there's nothing there on the pages. Okay, so we're at a 9.0 as per our grade, right? So let's just look at the grader's notes and see if there's anything out of line here. So I'm just looking at it offline. You can look it up yourself if you want. There's the number. But the notes do say spine stress lines break color on the cover. Okay, we already saw that. We know that's there. Very light crease, top of back cover, breaks color. So let's look at that. Okay, we kind of saw that. That's what I was talking about right there on the top. So we've already accounted for that. So there's really nothing in the grader notes to change what we've done here. So we're going to stick with our 9.0. So I would expect this book to be an 8.5, a 9.0, or a 9.2. Now this is a CGC copy, so we can just take a look real quick. Let me drag this up, and we'll do a little reveal here. Let's see where we're at. Okay, I've already done it. 9.0, there we go. We nailed it. So let's go ahead and take a look at another one here. Let's reset this. And the version that you'll get of this should have a way to reset the sheet here. That way you don't have to unclick every single one. That was a very heavy lift for me because I'm not like a software technical guy, so I had to watch a lot of YouTube videos to figure out how to do that one. Okay, so we're going to look at X-Men number 25 here and see what we got. Well, you can already see this is a nice book. Very nice book. It looks like it could be upper mid-grade or something like that. But let's go ahead and just do the process. I mean, if you were just to glance at this book, you might think, oh, wow, this is a high-grade book here. I better pay a maximum for this book. But let's not so fast. Let's go ahead and take a look here. So first thing we're going to look at is the bindery. It looks like there could be like a little something up there, and maybe right there at the bottom too. It could be a ding, but I'm thinking that might be more of a bindery issue. You can kind of see that little thing at the top where it could be like a tear. So let's just go ahead and go tiny on that because I'm not so certain about that. So let's err on that side. We definitely want to put something though because we think it's there. You'd rather put it there than be wrong. If you're going to err on one direction, err on the being surprised that it comes back a little bit higher than you expect. So that's the point. That's what I'm talking about there. So let's look at the corners. See a little ding there. That one's dinged a little bit. And that bottom corner I think is more of a ding, and the top might be more of a bindery issue. Let's look at the back. Yeah, that's definitely ding there. That one looks pretty good. Okay, so not too bad, right? So I think it's a tough one for me. It's hard to say on that one right there because there is some color loss right there on that corner. And that one's kind of bent in a little bit. It may not show up in the video, but it looks like there may be some color break with a tiny little crease on that corner. And that one is kind of dinged pretty good. I think I'm going to err on the side of moderate on this one. You could call that minor for sure. But for now, let's just call that moderate. I'm kind of positive that's more of a moderate thing on the bottom right. It's hard to see. These pictures aren't great. This picture isn't great, so we'll just go with that for now. And now let's look at the edges. Yeah, there's definitely some little ticks there at the top, and you can kind of see where it's like bent over on the top right there. If you look carefully on the top above the X, you can see where that's bent, like a thumb has or a finger has bent that over, and there's a little tiny little piece maybe missing there. But it's not bad. It's actually not bad at all. I don't even know that I would go moderate on that. The back edge looks really good. It's white, so it hides damage, obviously, but I think the back looks really good. So I think that's the only damage there. And since that's the only place I really see anything, maybe that right edge has a couple little places too, but it's hard to say. And that is the marble edge. They kind of give a little leniency, I think, on that because of the poor paper quality back then, and pretty much almost all the books had that. I would say we're somewhere between minor and moderate on that. So I'm going to err on the side of caution and not just go minor. I'm going to do this again on the edge. So now let's take a look at the spine and see what we got. Okay, you can definitely see some color breaks here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 color breaking ticks, 6 maybe. So I think you're just getting beyond minor there. Let's see if we can see anything on the back. Back doesn't really show anything. But I think that's enough. And there might be some places there like at the top too. So I think that's enough for us just to go ahead and call that moderate. A lot of people buy and sell books based on a spine. It's not extensive. I think it's just above minor, but I think it's enough. It's still there enough that I'm going to call it moderate. Okay, let's look at the staples, if we can see them. It's kind of hard to see here. I'm not really seeing the staples, but based on the quality of this book and what I can see, I'm going to guesstimate that the staples are not that bad. So let's just err on the side, just say probably, since it's off-white pages, let's say there might be a slight discoloration to a staple. And you can kind of, actually I can see that top staple right there. And it does look like it has maybe a tiny little stress line coming off of it. It's impossible to see discoloration. We'll call that tiny though. Notice I use that word tiny. Now let's look at the cover itself. It's hard to see. I mean, it looks really good. It's a darker cover, so it's hard to see. There might be some slight tanning there. So that's at least going to get us to minor. Yeah, there's definitely some tanning there. Oh, and there's a sun shadow at the top here if you look carefully. Yeah, like one of those dust shadows or whatever they call it. And there might be some creasing there. I don't know if it's the light, but there might be some creasing there and some discoloration. So I'm thinking this might be a moderate cover, but we'll check the grader's notes. I'm going to go ahead and mark it as minor for now, and we'll look at the grader's notes, see if there's anything notable. And as for the pages, like we said, it's off-white, so I'm just going to go tiny on that. So right now it's got us at about a 7.5, which looks about right from just looking at these pictures. But let's just read the grader's notes just to make sure and see if there's like any maximums that we're falling under that we have to adjust for. So let me pull that up real quick. Okay, so X-Men 25, and you can see the number here probably if you want to pull it up yourself. Light spine stress lines to cover. Okay, we already accounted for that. Very light cover tanning. Okay, we saw that. Okay, this is interesting. Very light creasing to cover. So there's creases here. Now those could be creases that maybe could be pressed out. So this might be one of those books that you could possibly resubmit. And this is also a good tool for that. If you come up with your ballpark grade is like 2 grades above what the book looks like, sometimes that can be a good candidate for maybe getting a bump. So we're going to go ahead and switch cover to moderate here, just because it says creases. It also says there's a very small split center of spine, and that might be what we're seeing here. So that makes me feel much more confident in our moderate spine, because there's a tiny split there. Kind of can see it right there. Very small split. So we'll go moderate on there. Okay, so that puts us at a 6.5. And let's just double check our chart here to make sure there's nothing. Let's see, small split. Let's say that was like less than a 1/4 inch tear, let's call it. So yeah, we're definitely within the realm. We could have up, in fact, at a 6.5, we could have a 1 inch tear or split. So I think we're good. 6.5 is what we're going to go with. Let's just do a little, let's check it out here. Actually, I could probably just do this. Did it come up? Yeah, 6.5. I mean, I've done like my last sample of doing this. I looked at like 30 books, and I was within 0.5 on every single one. I didn't even have one where I was, and I've slowly tweaked the points over time. This isn't something I just came up with overnight. I'm kind of a huge nerd when I become very much a perfectionist with OCD or something on this. So I've put some time, but I'll still call this the 1.0 version of this. And I'm not gonna, I mean, obviously your mileage might vary. Some of this stuff that I'm doing is subjective. So this is based around my subjectivity. So to use this, you basically have to learn my subjectivity, which maybe it won't work so great for some of you, but it's all I have right now, and it's the best I can come up with. And I hate to keep something like this to myself. So I'm sharing it with you, but just keep in mind, disclaimer, it might not work as well for you. And if it doesn't, maybe you can tweak it to work for you. I'm keeping the points open here. And so by the way, when you go to this sheet, I'll give you the link. Make sure you make a copy of it. You go to File at the top, make a copy, because it's not going to let you write on the one that you go to directly. So make sure you make a copy of it. So let's look at a lower grade book. You can see right now that this one is definitely a lower grade book. So we'll reset our chart here, and we'll just start going through the process. So bindery, on something like this, it's so heavily damaged, it's really hard to put anything on that. And this is Fantastic Four 48, by the way. You guys know that. This is an awesome book. I wish I had this book. This is definitely on my wish list, but it's very hard to get and it's very expensive. So let's see here. I would say nothing on the bindery. Let's just leave that blank because it's just heavily damaged. I mean, if you had the book in your hand and you could see where maybe there was one, but it's so worn that it probably would have erased that little binder issue by now. But let's look at the corners. So the corners are well rounded. Let's look at the back real quick. Corners are a little bit better on the back, but they're still pretty heavy, pretty extensive. Now, I wouldn't call that major because there's not like a whole giant piece missing or something. I would just say this is probably extensive. So I'm going to go with extensive. Let's take a look at the edges. Okay. I mean, just glance at it, you can see they're beat up pretty good. So once again, I would there's a little tear there. There's a couple more over there. If I'm not showing this good in the video, I apologize. I'm trying to do my best here to look at two screens. But this edge is like the marble edge. I'm not going to count that too much. But yeah, the bottom edge, oh yeah, there's a giant tear out of that edge. Some of that will be part of the cover, you know, but we'll just call that part of the edge. So I'm going to say extensive again. I mean, don't be shy. Give it whatever you think it looks like. You give the grade. Think if you can't really figure it out in your head what you should be, I just think, okay, you know, just go through your thing. Is it negligible? Would it take magnification? Is it tiny? It's there, but it doesn't really detract. Is it minor? It starts to detract, but not too bad. Is it moderate? It does detract quite a bit. Is it extensive where, okay, we're talking about mid to low grade books for sure? Or is it just major? It's like, okay, this is a book that's just been abused. If it's abuse, call it major. We're talking pieces missing. It's not just one little thing here or there, or a few things. It's all the way up and down that section of the book we're talking about. So the spine, yeah, that's major. It's split. There's tons that's going into the, I mean, there's ticks that are almost, they're, I think, an inch into the book there. So we're going to go major on the spine. Staples, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the staples detached on this book. There's no interior photos, unfortunately. But you can kind of see there's heavy stress on it. Yeah, that staple on the bottom might be detached slightly. So we're going to go extensive on the staples. I'm not going to say major because we're not 100% sure. Both were obviously detached and there was heavy rusting, but I'm not seeing that. I don't think we're major on the staples. I think we're just extensive. And cover, I mean, that's pretty major, right? I mean, there isn't a spot on this book that doesn't have damage or a crease. And there's that major tear on the back. Yeah, 1.5 to 2 inch tear. There's a tape pull in the middle. There's heavy staining, or moderate staining anyway. Spots, there's just about anything foxing, anything you could think of is on this book. So this is definitely a low grade book. So we're going to go major on the cover. And let's see, last thing we have is the pages. Well, all we know is it's off-white to white, so we don't really know much. So we're going to assume just by the overall look of this book, it's at least going to be minor. So I'm going to go with minor, and we could probably be into moderate, but we just don't know. So let's just go with minor for now. And I don't really think we need to look at like max defects or anything because we're already at 2.5. I mean, there's a lot of stuff allowable, but let's just glance at it. 4-inch tears, I think we're within that. Full 2 covers of creases. Well, yeah, both covers are probably fully creased. Several major defects. Yeah, we're at 2. Pieces missing. Not really too bad. So we're good there. Foxing, yeah, it's a little bit, not heavy, but it's moderate for sure. Staples can be rusty, so brown to off-white. We don't need to adjust further downward. I think 2.5 would be a pretty good grade on this book, depending on what the inside of the book looks like. So we'll see what we got here. And yeah, we're at 2.0. So it's probably just there were some issues to the pages, or who knows, but that's close. I mean, this book is a 1.5 to a 2.5. I would agree with this assessment. So 2.0 fits right into that. We're not exact, but when you get into lower grade books and lower mid-grade books, it's very subjective. somebody will just glance at the book and say, boom, that's a 2. Boom, that's a 3. So the fact that we even got anywhere in the ballpark is good, because we definitely wouldn't want to like just suddenly think this is a 4 and overpay for this book, because this could be a $5,000 mistake. Okay, so we have one more. I decided that we'd do one high grade one. I mean, I think we already did one high grade one, so we'll do another high grade one, sorry. So we'll look at a DC book here. We got Detective Comics. I believe this is 475, 475, yeah, right there on the top right. Yeah, this is a classic book here. Very nice book. So what we'll do here is, okay, so since this is a higher grade book, bindery can come into play on these. So we'll go ahead and just take a quick look here. Yeah, there might be a slight binder issue on here, but I think we're going to have to call it negligible. There's no obvious tear or anything. We'll wait for the grader's notes. So let's look at the corners. Okay, that one that corner right there is a little bit dinged. I don't think that's bindery. I think that's a little ding. This one's dinged slightly. This one, not sure about that. It could be tiny ding. So we're going to go minor. We're already at minor. I don't think we're going to get to moderate on this one, so we can just go ahead and move on here. So minor on the corners. Edges. Edges all look good on the front here. Let's look, see if we can find a back. I don't think we have a back. Yeah, we do. Okay. Back edge looks good. Yeah, the edge looks pristine on this book, so I'm not really worried about that. All right, so we'll go pretty much nothing on the edges. I mean, there's really nothing, so I don't see anything. I'm not going to put anything. This looks like a pristine book as far as that goes. So now let's just take a look at the spine. Maybe a negligible little tick right there. I mean, I think it's there though. I think there's a tiny little tick right there. I don't see any color breaks, but I do see that tiny, so we're gonna call that negligible. Could go tiny on it, but I'm gonna go negligible. On the spine, staples. That could be a tiny little stress on a staple that doesn't break color. But whether we put it on the stapler as part of the spine doesn't really matter as long as it's accounted for. So I'm going to go nothing on the staples. Let's look at the cover. I already kind of looked at the back cover while I was on there. I can't see anything on the cover. We'll check the grader's notes, but this is an ultra high grade, so I don't imagine there's going to be grader's notes. So there's nothing on the cover that I can see. And pages are showing white pages. We're going to assume on a book that's this pristine, there's not going to be anything on the pages. So I think we're going to just go with our 3.0. Now this book is borderline 9.6, 9.8. So it actually could go either way. Just based on what I'm seeing with this, I might make this book a 9.6 because of that corner right there and because of that corner. But I could see somebody giving this a 9.8. And it could just show up a little bit worse on here. Or that could be a bindery thing and they're not really counting it or something like that. But that corner, unless I'm just seeing it wrong, it could be something with a photo. But I'm going to call this a 9.6, possibly outside chance of 9.8. But it's a very nice book. So it is a 9.8. Okay. So it was within the realm of possibility. I mean, it is an inexact science doing it, looking at slabs. But once again, we know this book was not a 9.4, 9.2, 9.0. We could pretty much tell it's going to be maybe 9.4 if there's something we just can't see. Let me check the grader's notes here real quick. Yep, no grader's notes. So that's okay. Okay, so as you can see, this tool does a pretty good job of getting you at least in the ballpark, if not pretty close to spot on a lot of the time. You might notice on the right hand side I included this other one. Now if you're doing 2 books, obviously you can do 2 at a time, but really the reason I included this one over here is so you could first of all just rate a book. Let's just say we rated a book something like this, right? And it was a 7.5. And we're like, okay, then what you can do is you could basically be like, okay, nothing we can do about the binary, but let's say we pressed and cleaned this book. Could we improve anything? Let's say, well, probably not going to improve the corners, but maybe we could make a bend on the edge. We could maybe take down the minor. Or maybe, wait, I didn't include the spine here. Or maybe we could get rid of a lot of the stuff on the spine. Maybe we could clean the spine up and get that down to minor. Maybe the spine is a moderate just because, not because of color breaks, but because there's just a lot of bends there. So maybe we get that down to minor. Nothing we can do about the staples, but, you know, and maybe the cover isn't all creased up, so that would not be that. We wouldn't be able to help it too much. Not enough to get it down to tiny or whatever. Just to give you an example, so that way we can kind of compare, relatively speaking, whether we should think about pressing this book. If it was just maybe going to get an outside chance of a 7.5 or something like that, maybe we don't even send this off. But maybe if this is 7.0 and maybe, I don't know, somehow we got it to where it could be an 8.5, now that's something we might consider cracking the slab and sending it back in. Right? Or maybe we're thinking about submitting to CGC and we think, okay, maybe there's just a couple little defects here that could be pressed. But once we run it through here, we're like, okay, but it's not really going to bump the grade. So now I'm not even going to bother pressing it. Let's just send it in. So that's why I included this extra one over here. So you could just kind of do like a regular as it sits rating and then a potential clean and press rating as well here on the right-hand side. So you could just, you know, compare the two grades. All right, so I'm excited about this tool. I'm excited to bring it to you guys and let you, I hope it works as well for you as it's working for me. I do grade comics on my channel as well, so if you just look through, you can see this tool in action a little bit more. I'm actually going to grade a whole bunch of Silver Age books using this tool, and then I'm going to send it off to CGC and get those back, and then maybe I can recalibrate this tool to make it even better. So once again, the link is in the description to this. Make sure you make a copy of it, go to File, make a copy, and then you can have it for posterity. And if I ever improve and add on or do anything different with this, I will update it over time and I'll make announcements about that. So thanks for watching, happy collecting, and have a good day.